great turnout. We're so delighted to have you all with us today. And we're trying a hybrid event for the first time. So wish us all luck and good vibes. And welcome also to the people that are joining us through Zoom. So my name's Joanne, and I am a member of faculty here at LKC. And I'm the faculty lead for OPEN, which is the Office for Patient Engagement, if you haven't heard of it before. There's enough t-shirts with OPEN written on it that you will remember the name if you don't remember it now. So on behalf of Eileen and Mira and myself, welcome to our Open Conversations session that we're having today. So there will be, obviously you can see lots of cameras around. One of the things we try to do at Open is record a lot of our sessions because we know people can't always make it at the time. And people will be taking photos. So if you've got any, I prefer not to be photographed, just let one of the team know. But today we're here to talk about, from subjects to stakeholders, how we can get patients and people with lived experience at the centre of research. I've got lots of really great speakers and a panel for you as well today. So we're sure that you'll get a lot out of the session, and we're always open to feedback and what you want to hear more about as well. So there'll be an opportunity for that later. So this is what we're doing today. Welcome, Meg, who's just joined the Zoom. We're going to have a couple of talks to start off with. So we're going to have Paul and Julia talking to us about how they engage with patients and people with lived experience in their research work. And then we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat with Emily, who's a patient partner, and also Constantina, who's a researcher, joining our moderator Sherry for that. But we'll introduce everybody as we go along. So we do want to have lots of opportunities to make sure that any questions you have get answered. We're going to hold the questions for the fireside chat. So if you've got any questions that come into your mind as we go along, please feel free to scan this code now, and just feel free to put those questions in the app as we go along. And then I'm going to give Sherry the really hard task of making sure that she goes through them. And she'll try to address the questions that she can during the session time. So I'll give everybody just a moment, whether you're on Zoom or in the room, to scan that. And we are going to show it again a little bit later on. So if you've missed it now or your phone's not behaving, we'll come back to it later. Okay? All right. So enough from me. Now the good stuff happens. No pressure, Paul. Okay, so Paul is our first speaker today, and he's did his PhD in psychology at NTU, which Kelsey's part, and he does a lot of research in the areas of health and wellbeing, but also incorporating, patient and lived experience voices as part of that. He uses that to develop interventions and study their implementation, and he also is involved in a lot of teaching. So Paul's going to give us a little bit of an introduction to patient and public involvement and participatory action research. So he's going to use probably lots of the PPI, PAR acronyms, so get ready for that. Paul, very welcome, big welcome to you.
Thank you. All right, thank you everyone. So I will try and explain the acronyms as much as possible, because I think as Singaporeans we really like our acronyms, right? That's one of the first few things that international students always tell me. I'm very confused. PIE, AYE, LOL, PH, right? So all this stuff. But yeah, so today we'll be talking about PPI and PAR. PPI, patient public involvement, sometimes also known as PPIE, patient public involvement and engagement, as well as something that's pretty close to my heart, which is PAR modalities. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, so the title of my talk is something that sounds a little bit like revolution kind of thing. Nothing about us without us is for us, and I think policies have to be structured, thought about in this fashion, right? So PPI, PAR, these are all about growth, right? It's how we grow as a health ecosystem, it's how we grow as researchers, as clinicians, and even as active participants within this health ecosystem. So why is the healthcare ecosystem important to all of us? Eventually, we will all be patients or require this the system in some way, right? So we always would have a say in these kinds of things. So the Royal College of Physicians had a really nice little statement over here. Changes should be made guided by what matters to patients rather than what is easiest for surveys. Easier said than that, right? So being around healthcare workers, healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, caregivers, formal caregivers, medical social workers, my entire professional career, I know that sometimes what we want to do is to make life easier, to make things smoother, right? So that more people can enter the system without any any major issue. But sometimes and we've seen this a lot, not just locally, but globally as well, when we introduce things and they just fall apart in distance, right? Because we haven't been talking to the stakeholders who should be involved from like the very foundation of things, right? So yeah, so it is a very, very delicate balance to balance service efficiency as well as what matters to the people you are trying to serve, right? Okay, so PPI, I'm gonna try and keep this short because I do have only 15 minutes. Okay, so I sort of like divided this into major components just to sort of give you an overview of what PPI might be. Right, so PPI involves patients and public, right, in health and medical research related capacities in order to ensure that the research does address this need. What are their needs? What are their priorities? What do you need as someone with an individual with diabetes, right? What do you need as someone who has a certain type of cancer, right? So the nature of PPI is generally advisory or consultative, right? We see people, patients, caregivers come in and they usually play an advisory role, right? You ask them questions, you focus on improving health-related research work, you focus on service implementation. So when you step into a product chain, right, do you know where to go? Do you know what it is that you're supposed to be doing? Do you know who to talk to and stuff like that? Is it easy for you? Some of the questions you might ask it, not patients at public, or other gap areas within the healthcare ecosystem. What are some major gaps in that currently being faced, right? Involvement generally includes planning, design, dissemination, and oftentimes PPI, there isn't really co-research involved, right? The patient and public that you're engaging with are not really considered co-researchers. That's more of the area of PAR. So this is changing depending on who you talk to, and which journal article you're reading, and which expert you are listening to. But oftentimes there is this Venn diagram where both these kinds of modalities sort of combine, right? So yes. Okay, other key terms, so key approaches. So what do we do in PPI is to basically try and improve healthcare practice as well as policy level stuff, right? And what we want to do this is through patient insights. What is it that is from your own lived experience, who you are as a person? I wake up every morning, if I have diabetes, what is that like for me? What is it like controlling my sugar? What is it like doing the insulin jab? It's all that kind of stuff, right? What can make it easier, right? So the insights of this. The primary focus of foci are health-related issues, improvement of patient care and services. So really very, very focused healthcare and the health ecosystem. So the roles and responsibilities generally for PPI is researcher-led studies. So you see clinicians, scientists, researchers are the ones who are getting the grants, running the data, collecting the data, analyzing it, disseminating it. And it's very how generally normal academic work functions, right? Standard academic work, right? So the PPI part, or PPIE part, would be the input, guidance, and feedback that you will receive from patients, caregivers, healthcare, right? So say, for example, you are looking to revamp signages in the hospital, right? And you revamp everything already, and then you ask people, okay, how is this? Is this better? Is this worse? And they will give you their feedback, right? And perhaps excellent. So expected outcome, the outcomes of PPI generally are to improve healthcare research quality, to ensure that there is some form of alignment between the system as well as who the people are, as well as who the system is serving, right? So this one really is looking at applicability within real world segments, right? So not just the hypothetical, but real world, what can be used to immediately, right? Yeah. Okay, so an example of PPI, this is one that I took from the Oxfordshire Fracture Prevention Survey. So this is a phone call based general service that is being offered by the NHS in order for people with who are very right? So fracture prevention. So the aim of this was really for people with the lived experiences of using this scheme, right, to be involved in the quality improvement projects within these disciplines. So what happens at this point is that the NHS or the people who are running the Oxfordshire Fracture Prevention Service, they would have surveys that are mailed, so very old school, mail-in surveys to the people who are doing this, to the people who are part of this service, right? And they will follow up with phone calls. So for those of you who've done mailing like surveys, right, you would know how terrible uptake rates are, right? Even a SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics survey for those of you who are PhD students or who are studying a PhD or collecting data, you know how difficult this is. You send a survey to 100 people, you'll be lucky if 20 reply. And then out of the 20, maybe 1 or 2 would sort of not finish the survey, they get bored halfway, right? So just imagine mail-based, right? Snail mail as worse. And they realized that we needed to grow, right? They needed to grow. They needed more bespoke patient advice as well. And so they had set up patient advisory groups in order to think about fracture prevention services. But then, of course, people being people, difficult to pin down, difficult to tie down, difficult to meet, right? Regular meetings were very, very difficult. So all this advice that the patients and the public would give eventually became simply ad hoc, right? Just ad hoc. They realized that, okay, getting together everyone weekly to discuss these things, this was not something patients wanted to do. It wasn't interesting to them. They preferred more ad hoc kind of information sharing, right? So, but what they did do, even though it may seem that this is a little bit messy, and that's the reason why I chose it as an example, is messy, is unpredictable, right? PPI generally is like that. Participants ended up advising on things like letter wording, right, for documents, discharge documents. How do I understand what needs to be done during this process? They provided feedback on consultations as well, and under general quality improvement ideation. And so how this PPI aspect of the Oxfordshire Fracture Prevention Surveys can improve is to really sort of create more structured and formalized advisory groups. How can we make sure that people are able to attend these e-meetings, virtual meetings, a way forward, stuff like that. So generally, this is what PPI is, and generally, I think many of you will be sort of like familiar with that. Now, PAR, this one is a little bit different. PAR is a little bit more radical in the sense that it does seek to improve the world by somehow changing it for the better. And PAR has its roots in the anti-colonial kind of movements from the global south back in the 70s and 80s. So it really is an oppression suppression kind of philosophy, right? So it's the process of investigating reality, right, the hidden obvious, and in an attempt to promote social transformation, right, that we want to change as a people. There are some things that are not working out. So important modalities are things like photo voice, right? Photo voice is a popular one. If you haven't seen if you haven't heard the term, it's where people on the recordings who are part of the research study, right? The participants are given cameras and they're asked to go and take photos of their everyday lives, right? This is an example, early method, one of the core methods of PAR research, which was very, very transformative, right? So it is research generally with the people rather than research on the people. We refer to them as participants, not subjects, right? Because they are not subjected to the research process. They are participating voluntarily with it. And it's rooted in social values of aid, care, communalism, not communism, and communalism and reflective action as well, right? Oops, actually, my thingy is not okay. Yes, right. Okay. Uh-oh. Sorry, it's not an academic presentation. It isn't technical. It's self-in. Okay, I think it should be that right. Okay. Okay, yeah, correct. So academic research is to understand, right, generally the kind of research that we do. But PAR is really to inform action. What can we do? Now that we know about it, so what, right? We've argued about the philosophy, we've argued about the policies, but how can we actually do things to inform action, right, to change? So PAR is often applied as community and organizing leadership development tool, right? Because we want to find out what is the best way forward and how we can actually rise up. Okay, maybe not say rise up, but how we can actually start thinking about changes, right? Okay, so traditionally PAR is scholar activists, right? With a focus on liberation and transformation. So not just within the healthcare settings, we are looking at things like, I'll give you some examples later. Handling things like, racism, sexism, issues with gender, stuff like that, liberation and social transformation. It's a method that involves everyday people, right? Similar to PPI, this is a patient public involvement, right? And this can be community residents, clients, other constituents, right? In what we call social change-related approaches. Okay, so people with people work with professional researchers, right? To jointly think about the problem. So this is the nothing about us part, right? Without us part. So let's jointly think about the problem. Let's find out what we can do. How can we develop methodology to effectively collect data and to solve this issue, right? And the findings are then used to inform the creation of recommendations that we will push up to policymakers. Right? So I always give this example in class with my students. Say, for example, NTU or LKC Medicine or NUS is running they want to create policy on staff or researcher related strengths, right? But they don't talk to you at all, right? They just, as senior management, they pushed out all these fairs and campaigns and stuff like that. Would you be interested in contributing to something like that? Would you be interested in using that service? Chances are no, because it didn't involve you right from the start, okay? So PAR is really involving the participants, the stakeholders, right from the very beginning. And the ultimate goal is social betterment, community empowerment, as well as improvement of individual lives through policy, right? So what we really hope to do through PAR is to alleviate social inequality, inequity, oppression, and marginalization. Oftentimes these within the healthcare ecosystem are not stated as such strong words, right? But they do exist, right? General election just finished, so I feel like this is a bit of okay, so some key terms. I'm running out of time a little bit. Okay, yeah, no worries. All right. Okay. So the purpose of PAR is to collaboratively research. Is collaborative research really to address social issues, right? Is to improve practice by involving participants as active co-researchers. So that's the key word over here, right? So where PPI is more advisory, consultative, PAI is participatory. It's transformative in that sense, and it hopes to empower community and facilitate social change. So participants, when I mean co-researchers, they are there and they are involved in every step of the way, right? Every stage, right? From the conceptualization, is there a problem with how patients perhaps understand, when they go to the pharmacy, they understand what kind of medicine to take, right? Is there an issue there? They are involved right from the front, right from the very start. I don't understand what's going on here, right? So they are also involved, okay, what can make you understand? What can help this process along, right? What can help this process along? So that involves the designing, the conducting, and the analysis of the research. So your participants become co-researchers and so it's an iterative process that leads to action and reflection, and I'll go through a very, very short little model later, right? And the focus of PAR is not just restricted to health-related settings. It's looking at broader social questions. It's where people generally are underrepresented and marginalized, right? So the researchers as well as the participants share equal authority in the research process. And this might be very, very difficult for us as researchers or clinician scientists to think about, right? You struggle to put together a research project and then you want to bring someone in who's completely untrained and you might derail the entire thing. That's always a very scary thing that can happen, right? But that's why PAR has a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of it is trust, and a lot of it is trust in the process, right? So the expected outcomes is really focusing on action, social change, empowerment. So these are words I'm repeating because I do want you to know how important they are. Right. So some assumptions, people who experience the communal problem are in the best position to conduct research. I think that's very, very true, right? Me as an individual, I have personal life experience with regards to many things, being a male, being a minority in Singapore, so I can comment on things like that because that's my lived experience, for example. For those of us who are caregivers, your lived experience as caregivers is supremely important as well, right? So everyone, this is the assumption that everyone can learn some form of basic research skills. We all did, right? We all know how to conduct a survey, right? To give a survey, to conduct perhaps an interview, right? And there is equitable partnership involved within the research process. Okay? So co-researchers, in that sense, the participants that you're working with, no longer become participants. They evolved beyond that, right? They can advocate for funding, legislation, government action, and to really adopt research findings and recommendations, right? So really being very involved from the start, from the get-go. And it shifts the role of being voiceless, of being marginalized. I need other people to speak for me. Do I have the authority to speak about my own problems, about my own issues, and come up with solutions to change my issue or problematic way of living in the public, right? So it empowers people who are otherwise powerless, right? So PAR methodology follows generally these kinds of things. There's a lot of reflection involved. You define the problem, you might take action, you observe, you see, is this working out, right? You reflect and then you redefine the problem. So you keep doing these kinds of things in cycles to make sure that the problem is actively being solved from all perspectives, from all lenses, right? So some very quick, okay, I'm a little bit over time, but I apologize. Some very quick examples of PAR. In a health-related setting, this is from ACRA, right, in Dala. This is known as the Suyana project. So this was actually our Take Heart, right? So it started out as a series of interviews, right? A bunch of researchers came in and they, okay, yeah, we want to find out more about diabetes. And they just interviewed people. And over 12 years after the interview process, right, they continued working with the people they had interviewed, right? And eventually they worked to diagnose the burden of chronic conditions. They eventually started to develop their own psychosocial interventions, right? All from a bunch of interviews, right? For cardiovascular and associated conditions. And they began to critically reflect what are some long-term goals that the health system needs to have. So eventually the Jamestown Health Club, or the JTHC, was formed. They had met monthly, regularly, right? As patient advocates. So they served as not just patient advocates, but also advised on city and national level policies, right? Eventually, they were able to support graduate students as well, all from a single qualitative study with about 12 interviews, 13 interviews a day, right, around that. This evolved. So that's an example of the redefining the evolution. The Morris Justice Project is another one. So this was in New York, in the States, which is perhaps not the best place to be right now. And at this time, there was an increasingly aggressive stop and frisk policy in predominantly black neighborhoods. So that was a major issue. And the local residents started to get, like, obviously, a little bit angry about this, right? So they started surveying their neighbors. They took on the role as researchers, right? And they started to gather evidence on stop and frisk. And stop and frisk is very, very invasive as a procedure. It's racial profiling. It's all these things that are quite unethical. So they themselves, as untrained researchers, compiled statistics and evidence, and they started working with, I think, CU University of New York, and they started to campaign all of the things that they had found out on the sidewalk, right? And they campaigned for changes to policing law, which was successful in some regard in New York. Right. So some examples of PAR, of empowering powerless communities. So what would you need to have as a PAR researcher? Generally, respect for others' knowledge and knowledge systems. So not using, being having cultural humility, not just cultural competence. So it's not enough to know someone else's culture. It's to have that humility and understanding it from their point of view, right? Kindness, authenticity, being able to share power and control, which for researchers might very, very difficult, right? With populations might be even harder, right? Sharing power and control, trusting the process, because like I said, a lot of moving parts, everything going all over the place can be quite difficult. Being able to be open to learning opportunities as well, right? So all of these things are important soft skills for it, right? And finally, some practical advice for if you're thinking of doing PAR related research. One, One, do your groundwork, look at all the problems, all the different types of lenses and perspectives, and think whether or not PAR or PPI is the way forward for this. Look at all the available literature first, right? That's the very first step. Then consider the methods, right? Is PAR more valuable? Is PPI more valuable? How much involvement do we want our participants or co-researchers to take, right? You might want to talk to a bunch of experts, such as like perhaps myself, right? Or senior researchers, right, to help you out. It's just to sort of brainstorm it out, right? I think this can be very, very helpful because I think the more information coming in, the different voices coming together, the open voices coming together, right, that can really change the face of the research work that you need to do. Plan ahead and leave room for uncertainty. So a lot of us do not like to seek control, but this is one very, very key important thing that you have to do it here, right, is to seek control, right, is to share this power, right. Having a structure is helpful, having a loose structure is better, right, realizing that things can change, things can move, things can evolve, and they can grow, right. And also buy-in is very important, so right from the start, who is it that needs to be involved, right? Are we looking at patients? Are we looking at caregivers? Are we looking at clinicians, GPs, surgeons? Who is it in the healthcare ecosystem that needs to be involved in what capacity, right? So make your expectations clear for everyone very, very early on. And finally, allow your own duty of care to lead and coalesce with your work, right? Because I think all of us are in the healthcare related work in some way, ancillary or otherwise, because we care about people, right? We ourselves as researchers have the duty of care, right? So allow that to lead your work, right? So that's it from me. Thank you so much. And if you have questions.
Thanks. That was great. Thank you so much, Paul. So we're going to come back to Paul later on in the panel and you can ask him lots of questions. So we're going to move straight along now to Julia. Where's Julia? There she is. Come up, Julia. Julia is a senior nurse clinician specialises in wound care. She's done a lot of additional training to get that position. And then she decided to do a PhD. And she's going to share with us today a project that she's done as part of that program of work, which has involved people with lived experience or patients in some of the co-design elements. So over to you, Julia.
There you go. Thank you, Prof. John, for the kind introduction. So this right? Okay, very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm a senior women's clinician from National Healthcare Group Polyclinics, and I'm also a PhD student at Biometer. I'm the Prof. Conduct you. So I'm share this co-design work and for patients with diabetes. So this is our co-design. Just like everybody else, and this project actually was honoured at Best Diabetic Intervention Awards by John Wound Care this year. And this award is more than just a clinical award. Actually, this is something like it's a validation of what is possible to bring all clinicians, patients, and the researchers together to co-design a care for our patients. So I'm going to cover these 4 parts. And first part is the diabetic foot ulcer is more than the basic clinical text is bone challenge. The next one is the co-design treatment process followed by healing program. And the last one, I'm going to share a little bit of our healing trial. We completed our trial. I'll just share because of time constraints. I'll just share the qualitative feedback from our patients. So as we all know, diabetic foot ulcer is really is a huge problem for our patients, families, and nation. And also because DFU, diabetic foot ulcer, in short DFU, and pose high clinical and economic burden and high impacts for our patients and healthcare systems and caregivers and entire nation because of high cost, high volume, and high impacts. And I'm not going to read all these impacts without time constraints. The prevalence is high, and also the recurrence rate is high. Although in polyclinic and specialty hospitals, we work together, we have a lot of multidisciplinary teamwork and interventions that outcome is really suboptimal. Evidence shows that the self-care, self-management lower risk of recurrence. This is a systematic review results. So what is the practice from our patients? So that's told will not comfortable just very silly. So Mr. A is a patient underwent the 3 toe amputations of each month. That after each trial amputation wound healed. So this is the first amputation, then second toe amputation, and third toe amputation. Before the toe amputation, wound healed and before toe there was for amputation. So as an evaluation, we asked ourselves, specialists in tertiary hospital have done impressive work to save toes. And the healthcare professionals in polyclinic are consistent to heal point without any complications. So, however, patients' self-management behavior looks like quite poor and suboptimal. Those amputation present or caused by in what way? So obviously, this is a growing challenge for our patients, caregivers, with the entire healthcare system. So the challenge is huge. It's a growing challenge. Alone, we can do little. Together, we can do more. So this is our research aim, and what we want to do is bring everybody together, our patients, caregivers, clinicians, and researchers, to co-design self-care intervention to support our patient wound healing through empowerment and active listening. We name our projects healing. Next, I will talk about co-design framework and process. This entire co-design framework actually was structured into 3 phases: exploratory, identification, and refinement. So for this exploratory phase involves conducting interviews and surveys. We conducted interviews with 40 patients, caregivers, healthcare providers, and including podiatrists, family physician, nurses, and also patients with active DFU, patients with a huge DFU, patients without DFU, altogether. And then we also conducted surveys with 236 patients and use validated tools, and we analyze the data, use thematic analysis and structured equation modeling for the survey. The next part is identification. We identify intervention contents and the intervention delivery modes, and we through workshops with co-design meetings. And the last part is a refinement through workshop and it's a co-design meetings with co-designers. I'm going to share the results from our qualitative interviews from our patients. So those are the quotes from our patients. They picked the last row. The quotes they choose from the patients with 70 years old, and the patient had diabetes for 22 years, and the patient has a diabetic for also 24 months with a small little follow-up, unable to heal. And then he underwent multiple toe transmetatarsal amputations. He shared with me that controlling diets make me lose appetite. Coming here for wound dressing make me feel exhausted. I still have to wear this kind of ugly aerobic shoes. And if 2 years that little toe can't heal, I don't see how few months gonna help. Just let it be. So clearly, these patients, the illness perception I have hindered them to perform self-care. And the key enablers shared by our patient is motivation and self-care, confidence supported by healthcare professionals. And the key barriers shared by our patients is passive low control over ulcer and treatment. And this is the result from our structural equation modeling, and then we found that the model, the result shows that patients' diabetes, distress, poor confidence, and illness perception, including track perception and control perception, those are all predictors to predict self-care behavior. So evidence is clear, and how we can encourage our patients and fostering both emotional resilience and personal agency as a key psychological drivers to enhance our patients' ability and willingness to self-care. We need to restore confidence. We need to address their emotional distress. We also need to enhance their knowledge. Most importantly, we need to support their autonomy. And so how can we do that? Motivational interviewing is a powerful tool actually to help our patients to enhance their knowledge, support their autonomy, and address their diabetes distress, and eventually can help them to improve their engagement in self-care. So this is our goal for the design framework. And I just want to share a little bit our co-design framework. And so the first role is I use my pros quotes. Right? So we started this session with clearly the sections about listening, learning, and designing with you, not for you. And be yourself. You are the expert in your care, and your voice has real impact. And another thing I want to share is the interview guides for patients. So when we start interview, we will ask our patient, how and what would you like your willingness to help you? And when giving information and provide knowledge to support your self-care to especially when things not go well. And when we ask our nurse, the clinician co-designers, ask them, what would help when giving information and providing knowledge to support your patients' self-care, especially when patients have brain wounds and distress. And this is the last part of the joint workshop somehow put here. And the next part I'm going to share our healing program. So as I mentioned, 3 phases. And so phase 1, we identified the enablers and the barriers. And phase 2, we identified contents, intervention contents, and the delivery methods. And the phase 3, and we refine our intervention outputs and section outlines. So basically, this is the healing program in session 1, and the nurse facilitators and patients together and to address their self-care skills. And section 2, we help our patients to manage their emotions with permission from patients. The last section is a healing English that basically wrap up everything together. Okay, and the last part actually is our healing trial. As I mentioned, we finished our trial. The trial actually, the healing was evaluated with a mixed methodology. And I'll just share this quality part of the feedback with everybody here. So based on a lot of trial, qualitative trial, and then patients are sharing with us what is delivered and how it's delivered. So what is delivered, they feel that all these programs really enhance my knowledge. As these patients share with me that I know the shoes very important. I started wearing right footwear, and last time I just wear normal shoes. And then the patient share with me that I have better understanding of the wound infection. So next time if a little bit infection, I'll just go and see a doctor instead of delay and end up with amputation. So the next one is emotional healing. So patients share with me that, I'm not alone. Now I know someone at least I can talk with around. And the next patient shared with me, we still, after wound dressing, we still bond the wounds, but we come back from clinic, and even though we are very tired, but we feel very heavy and with less stress after the session. And another patient shared with me that never judge us. They never judge us, never blame us. But sometimes the wound is very smelly and the wound deteriorated. But every party is with that they are with us. Listen to us. This is very important. My guide on my side. the best is just listen, explain, ask, and teach us so well. And another patient shared that all the only guidance look was give us advice, no forcing. This makes us understand what is therapy. The bottom part is like we can depend ourselves. We are drivers. And also, they are very satisfied with the co-design materials because we use a card sorting cards. One side is a board and another side is a picture. So they go, oh, this is footwear and this is footwear. So this is sometimes by talking without this kind of visual kind of cards. And you know how to tell them and know your problem by heart, and they started to change. And another thing that patients feel that, oh, this is very unique, encourage us and to think about our practice. So they also feel that the scheduling of the healing sections really suit their purpose because we pair the healing session together with their wound care, wound dressing, after wound dressing, then the healing. So they feel that, oh, this is for our schedule. We don't have to come here purposely for the wound dressing. This is so nice. And the last piece is harmony with autonomy. And patient share with me that I have the nurse share with me that I have my own limitations. I'm not able to help this. I keep on rolling. But sometimes after the interview, and sometimes it's quite sudden, when they actually know what's wrong in their life. They are the expert. And it's also last quote from our patient is a nurse go through training with us think about change. People usually don't like change. Change is very painful. But healing made me a better person. It empowered me to change. This is my last slide. So the co-design drives relevance because it was grounded in real-world needs and experiences from our patients and providers. And also this is visible because it's practical and well-suited to patients' routine clinic visits. And it also is accessible, acceptability upon that. This is affirmed because this is non-judgmental person-centered care. And also easy to implement, and the next step, of course, reflecting this to the large scale trial. And the takeaway from this co-design study is brief psychological support when co-designed with patients embedded in the existing care pathway has empowered patients and improve the IVU self-management and transform care from let it be to we are drivers together. I would like to thank all my the entire journey this time is long. It's 27 months, right? I'm not alone. And entire team to support me from my polyclinic department and my lab. And especially the Haley co-designer. This is only our staff here. I didn't manage to get consent to share locations also. We have a notes out in the co-design room. I didn't manage to get a consent to share the photo. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my supervisor, Prof. Constantine and my co-supervisor, Prof. Lee. They really support me. They really trying to support, and they treat me so gentle, especially when things didn't go well sometimes. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so now we are going to move on to our fireside chat. So I'm very pleased to introduce Sherry. Here she is. Sherry lives with vasculitis, and because of that experience, she founded Autoimmune SG, which is a group of people that do autoimmune conditions to be able to come together. But importantly, from an open perspective, Sherry's been with us since the very beginning of the the journey, and so she's part of co-creating everything that we've done actually. So very big thank you, Sherry, for agreeing also to facilitate this session. And we have got our other panelists who I'll get Sherry to introduce, but just as a reminder, again, if you wanted to scan the QR code, put that up for you so that you can ask the questions. But I know Sherry's got quite a few up her sleeve to ask as well. All right, so I'll hand over to you. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So first of all, for the Mentimeter, right, I really saw one question. If you have a panelist in mind that you would like to answer, please write the panelist name. If not, I will just arrow someone. So first of all, now I just like to invite all the panelists to come and have a seat, and then I will do the introductions for those who have not been introduced before. So Paul, please have a seat. Emily, Nadia, we're all first name today. Julia. Okay. Oh yeah, good. I will sit here, and I think we need to have two mics, so I'll just pass to leave the hall first. Okay, sorry, I needed to go on the menu. Okay, so first of all, I think I need to introduce some of our panelists here. Yeah, I think we've all met on Zoom, but we've not actually met in person till today. So Paul has been introduced, so sorry, skip Paul first. Okay, I will go to Nadia. So it's in the bio, but I will definitely say it. Nadia is a professor of health, psychology, and behavioral medicine at LKC School of Medicine, which is right here. And then she's a chartered health psychologist and an internationally recognized researcher in psychonephrology, focusing on the psychological and social well-being of individuals living with kidney disease. And her research aims to improve patient outcomes and healthcare services by developing programs that enhance treatment adherence and better align services with patient needs. So a round of applause for Nadia.
And thank you so much. And another question that I might be wondering, how did you go from Constantina to Nadia? So Constantina is my full Greek name, but to my family and friends, I'm also known as Nadia. So thank you so much.
Okay, serious, what gives us Is the mic working?
Maybe I didn't turn it on, but maybe
It was this one? Okay. That. Sorry. Okay, it's on already. So I'll just pass it on just in case. Okay, and next I want to introduce Emily. I want to say that Emily is a passionate, like that was intentional, advocate who has gained prominence in the global dementia community. She is a member of Dementia Alliance International, a member of Sing Health Patient Advocacy Network SPAN, a member of the WHO Guidelines Development Group, and also an Open Voices patient partner. And hence she's wearing the t-shirt, and I've obtained Emily's consent to say this. So please follow Emily Ong on LinkedIn because she's so passionate about her work and she always shares about her advocacy. Yeah, so round of applause for Emily. Okay, so I think my first question is for Paul. Okay, nothing about us without us. It's for us. It's a slogan used by disability rights organizations to include people with disabilities in the planning and development of policies and programs that affect them. And wait, before I go to your question, I just want to give a fun fact. In Singapore, we do have a book released in 2023 called Not Without Us, Perspectives on Disability and Inclusion in Singapore. So you can find that book, and they use PAR methodology in that. So Paul's question is, in your experience, what is the most significant practical challenges researchers face when applying this principle in research, health research and policy, and how can we bridge these gaps?
Wow, I feel like I'm on a game show, you know. Okay, so in my own experience, I think generally it's the same with introducing qualitative research work to people who are very quantitative. There is this fear of, oh no, how is this going to turn out? there is this fear of whether or not I should even be attempting something like this, right? It's not so much a lack of buy-in, but it's a fear on the researchers' part of moving forward, right? With regards to new methods. But for those of you who are intending or even thinking about PAR method, if it has struck a chord with you, then you should definitely go and do it, right? So I personally work with end of life, grief and bereavement related work. That's not something that you wake up one morning and decide, oh, I want to work with people who are terminally ill, right? It's something that I felt that, okay, it's meaningful. I kind of have the stomach for it a little bit, but I'm not sure. And then at that point in time, I had my supervisor, my wife, they tell me, if you can do it, you should do it, right? So if you think just even an inkling that PAR is something you want to explore, please go ahead and do it. Come and talk to us, come and talk to the researchers, come and talk to your senior researchers. We will definitely help you out with them as well. Yeah, so it's not so much buy-in, it's just sort of fear of the unknown. Right? Yeah, like, Frozen 2, go into the unknown.
Okay, so that was about researchers, but I mean, because of Mentimeter, I think this is a very related question, so I'll just go ahead to ask, and I think it's for you. So we talked about researchers that, so you feel that the most significant challenge is going into the unknown for researchers. Okay, but for patients, so the question is, how do we encourage vulnerable, disempowered service users to work with researchers to do PAR in the context that patients, I guess, in Singapore are not used to speaking up?
Right. Yeah, that's really very, very good. It's a wonderful question. And I think the short answer is that basically we just have to look to everyone wearing the Open Voices t-shirt. This is like successful, right? This is what success looks like with regards to how patients can be involved. I think again there is a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear that even if I say something, nothing's going to change, right? Even if I share my thoughts, nothing's going to change. But I think it's from a very psychological perspective, it's probably creating a safe space with these people that you want to work with first, right? Allowing them to be heard, not in a larger global space as of yet, but just within you as a clinician or researcher and the individual. And once they feel comfortable enough doing that, then we can tell them, look, your voice is actually super important. It has taught us so much and can teach so much more people this, right? I think the reason why I have gotten a lot of buy-in with the work that I do for people who don't have very much time left is because they believe in the project. They believe they want to teach, they want to talk about their experiences. They just need a platform where they know they will be supported by doing so. So for us, on the back lines, that's what we can provide them. The support, the safe space. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so the support and safe space. So now I'm going to jump to Emily because, we are talking about, this is on the subject of patients. So for Emily, based on, you've done a lot of overseas research experience, and I know not in Singapore, but we will go to that later. So as a patient advocate living with cognitive impairment, what specific actions did the overseas researchers take to ensure that you are meaningfully engaged? And what were the areas of support, that facilitated your successful involvement in the project?
Okay, now, people might be asking, why am I doing overseas and not local? Well, Singapore has much to learn from other countries, and one country that definitely Singapore can learn from is from Australia. Now, my involvement in research is all overseas, with Australia, with UK, with Germany, and with Canada. Why is that there, people with lived experience, the lived experience itself is being recognized as a form of acquired expertise, nothing less than the professional technical expertise that you gain from your academic training. So when we sit on the round table, we have the same voice volume, same decision power. And the other thing is that the researcher will never make assumption of the patient. Even though the researcher, most of them have worked with me, not just for one project, for multiple projects already, they never assume that they know me because of my condition there will be changes, and the kind of support that I need will change according to the time. So that's another thing. The other thing is that the communication and the trust the relationship and the communication is very important. So even though in the whole research cycle I was involved from the beginning, for me, the shared understanding of what is the topic that we want to talk. We're not even talking about coming out with a research question all the way until the research is done, and I will not be able to involve throughout because it will be too cognitively demanding. But I never left out in the communication, in the email thread. So I'm always part of the whole email thread. So I know what is going on. And then the what you call is that the PI will follow up with me via personal email and say that, okay, Emily, this is what is going on. Is there anything that you would like to understand further? The part that that's too abstract or too difficult for me. Yeah, so that is another thing. And I guess to me is that it is very important when we talk about nothing about us for us, is that you must always make sure that the engagement that you had with the people, with the lived experience, is meaningfully crafted right from the beginning, not at when you need the data. It has to be right. It's not an afterthought. You have to craft it into your research process, so that every component of it you have the voice of the people with the lived experience. So for me, that is very important because I'm part of the WHO Meaningful Engagement Committee. So recently, we are now gearing up towards the higher level meeting and promoting it. We just launched we just have a very successful stakeholder meeting. So that is something that I really value from my overseas experience.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. I think from our discussion, I remembered that you described so clearly how you were involved in the project. So correct me if I'm wrong. This is from memory because I realized I didn't write it down. That first of all, if I'm not wrong, they consulted you on the research topic, and they came with a summary that you agreed with.
Yes.
And then they mentioned, you kind of mentioned that usually the next step is like literature review, and for that you opted out of the process, because you advocated for yourself that was that was something that you needed, and after they are done with the research, they came with a summary for you to agree. And then after that, there were also other processes like evaluation and all that. And you mentioned that the patients need to voice out for themselves in which area they wish to be supported.
Yes. Thanks for bringing up that. So now, when you want to engage people with lived experience, you have to consider don't decide for them. Let them decide for themselves which part of the research process they are in. They feel competent and they feel that they can contribute meaningfully. So for me, it's that when coming to a literature review, that is not my cup of tea. Okay, I cannot do that. That is too connectively demanding for me. But it is very important part of the research. So before we can come to formulate the question, to refine the question, so the researcher do all the work. I'm one of the co-authors. Okay, that's the other thing, being given the co-authorship. So as a co-author, is that the PI will ask me that, okay, are you available? We are going to do a brief with you, and then so that's all the what you call the lead review will be summarized into plain language, because I'm not a researcher. I don't speak researcher language. So everything plain in the consumer language, and then I understand. Yeah. So that is one thing, and then after that I will provide the input whether is it sufficient or not. And if not sufficient, which area is not sufficient? From a patient and from a consumer perspective. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. So maybe I will move on first, but I may come back to you with the Singapore context question. So maybe I will go on to Nadia for your question. So drawing upon your experience working with Julia on the project and your expertise in research methodologies, could you share some crucial factors and underlying principles that could help a researcher decide on the best way to involve patients in their research? So principles and factors to guide a researcher.
A big question.
Big.
That's really big. How to condense it? Maybe I'll just give some examples from the story that brought me and Julia together. Because Julia came with a problem as a nurse. She could see how her patients are struggling. And she wanted to do a PhD and kind of partner up with this. And so together we came together to come up with something that makes sense from a person that want to service and provide care to other people, and bring in a little bit of psychology and research into it. How do we bring psychology and for the benefit and the practice? So we're kind of working together. So one of the things we need to do, I think, to do a better job is to understand that we need to let go of some of that expertise, and that involves both the expert by experience, the researchers, and the practitioners. As an example, in that program, there was only very limited thing that we could have done within 3 sessions, right? The nurses wanted to fix all the issues that patients are struggling with because they know what needs to be done for the wound to heal. But you can't do that in 3 sessions, right? So I want to say, just kind of let go. What is possible? Let's give people some choice. So we gave choice to the patients to choose the topic of the consultation. We've done that with work with NKF, by the way, where people can choose what that topic of the conversation would be. So one of the things that we need to do is to kind of realize that wearing the hat of a researcher is wearing the hat of the clinician or a patient, but we need to let go a little bit. So decide then, what is that patient engagement, what's the purpose for it, right? You can't do anything. So have a purpose, have a framework, and be flexible to let go, right? So we had some plan about how the co-design would work, but some of the things did not pan out perfectly. And we needed to let go a little bit when it didn't suit the patients, when it didn't suit other things, whether the things that we wanted to put in the program were not possible. So we also spoke to the senior admin people in the NAC polyclinics. So it needs a certain degree of flexibility to let go and agree that we're going to work together. A little bit of this. And the other thing I think is what you said, is have a very good open communication. So whether it's an update, whether it is a question about explaining the decisions and the constraints, right? Because sometimes we want to do things and it cannot be a perfect thing. So our program taught us a lot of things. It's far from perfect. It's something that worked quite well. Could we have done better? Oh yes, we could. But this is what we could have done with the best of intentions and with a genuine interest to make things that could be implemented in practice. Does that make sense? That kind of way of kind of letting go a little bit and working with is actually quite important, and it transpired throughout the program. But it's also the research. So if you remember some of the quotes in Julia's studies, they said the nurse listened, first. That was the first thing, and that's not. And so that's what we want to do as researchers, right? You need to listen first, right? Before you go into the plan. Do you want to have conversation with people? Do you want to strike conversation with the taxi driver to figure out what's happening? Do you want to read a qualitative word? Just listen first before you go into the plan and practice it. So that kind of openness, I think, creates a different music, and I think that's what Emily talked about. It's something that transpires with the way you're not actually dealing. You're having conversation and exchange with people. We work together with Julia at the PhD as 2 experts. Okay, she's doing her PhD. The title could be a candidate, but she's a way experienced witness. I had no clue about the issues. I did not know what I don't know, so I needed to listen first. She needed to listen to that. We need to listen to the patients, then we needed to listen to the administration of the polyclinics, and come up with some of those pieces. So I think that's the key thing. that humility to kind of let go and work with. Julia, I don't know if you might want to add.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nadia. So I hear about humility, and I'm very close with what Paul said about having this loose structure for both PPI and PR. Yeah, so maybe Julia, would you like to add on? And also maybe you also could share some specific challenges on the ground, because I think during our discussion you did share that you had to adapt certain things, you had to, the layout of the room, all that. So perhaps you could dive into that.
Thank you. Yes, it's impossible without challenges for this complex intervention development. Initially, we wanted to do the first workshop combine a few polyclinics patients. Usually can travel from polyclinic A to polyclinic B and C to B. So we choose see a nice layout and the new building, and then inside the conference room with chairs, tables, everything had. But in the end, we change our plan, we change our protocol because traveling part is very tough for our patients, especially for patients with foot ulcer and some patients with partial amputation, dental amputation, and some with below-knee amputation. And then even without amputation, it's just a foot wounds, and they minimize their weight bearing. They need to wear customized shoes. All this is unsteady for them. So we change our plan and to suit patients' needs and their value. And then we split our workshop into initially we planned one big one, and with patients one big one with healthcare workers. And then we split our patients workshop into two, one from clinic A and one from clinic E. So patients could visit clinic A as a regular patients to wound care, and they participate in the workshop in clinic A. So another patients then participate in another workshop in their own clinic. So we change our care protocol, the research protocol based on patients' needs. Another thing is also because this diabetic foot ulcer is really very challenging for even for specialists and for primary care. So because the wound healing process is really dynamic, and today the wound is okay, tomorrow patients already in emergency department, the next day to amputate. So we planned workshop on certain day, and the patient all okay, and then we are going to start our workshop. But almost half of I think our last workshop, we planned to have 10 patients, but in the end, we only have 6 patients participating. Another 4 patients were night checks with their primary care nurse in the polyclinic. The other nurses in hospital. It's really very challenging. And then after they come back, and then I need to update them what's going on. And then it is very sad. And big toe loss and little toe loss, partial foot loss. So yeah, this is very challenging. We need to, as a researcher, and then also prof is very busy. We schedule the session and we need to change, no choice. We have to change so our patients' needs. Yeah. And another thing is when we do co-design and we schedule the session on patients' clinic visit day, we don't choose specifically choose all of it, but that day I'm free and prof is available, so I choose this day. No. It's really a patient-centered kind of co-design process.
Okay, thank you so much. I think you also answered one of the questions on the panel already. Yeah. So I think the question was, how do you integrate healing into the clinical workflow of a time-scarce public healthcare system in Singapore, which I think you kind of gave it. It sounds really hard. It's not about your free time, but it was about the patient's appointment. So I remember very clearly in the discussion in the slides that Julia shared that they only scheduled the workshops during the patient's appointment in the polyclinic. Yeah, but Julia, I have another question for you here. So one of the audience asked, what were the methods you used to encourage change in your healing work or perhaps Nadia can answer? Because you can share and educate, but it will still be difficult for patients to change.
I think this is a very, very good question. Initially, before I interviewed my patients, before I start this research, I really don't know how to answer in a better way, but I use my patient's codes, my nurse codes, just now I shared. So patient keep on rolling to ask them to, how do you like to your hair to be, blah, blah, ask a question, but in the end, they just like, they know they need to change, but they just like keep on going. One day suddenly they change, they make changes. They tell you that I need to do this, I need to cover my wound when I do my showering. Initially, they just happily shower, then wound dressing wet, and even sometimes like because the dressing we need, I always ask the patient when to keep their dressing dry until next visit, because wet dressing easily cause wound infection. So initially they just like happily showering, then wound in wet, and they just don't care. Then after that, suddenly they share with us, I need to cover my wound with plastic bag or with something else. I need to keep my wound dressing dry because I want my wound to heal. So it's a silent change. It's not overnight change.
Can I just comment on this? One of the things that we worked with the team of nurses, because they are experts in the wound dressing, but what we wanted to do is to skill them to wait up before they try to correct the patients. And the understanding is, as Julia said, all the patients aspire to good health and wellness. They're just a little bit stuck, right? It's not that they need you to tell you that this needs to change. They kind of know and it happens. But it's about creating the kind of music for people to kind of pluck up the courage and try once more, particularly with such a difficult thing. And I'll break it down a little bit. You want to hear a little bit of the philosophy of the program. For instance, it's about recognizing that people are not just having like gaps in knowledge and skills. So we actually acknowledge that they're already doing some bits on diabetes and wound care that are doing really well, the strengths. And the nurses offer affirmation to create positivity. That it's not that everything you've done is so bad and now you have an amputation, but actually you've been doing fairly good in a couple of things. We just need a couple of things to fine tune. So we started off with the positivity to create that kind of music. Then we offer them choice. Out of all these things, what is the bit that still you kind of have the most questions or you find it difficult? They choose, right? Because they know, right? They're not empty vacuums, right? So they choose, and once they choose, it's their topic. The nurses could very gently offer that advice which they have. And I use it often when I train medical students. The advice is like snowflakes that land onto the ground very softly. So we work with nurses to have a soft offering with the advice that the people know, and then people that were able to make the changes. So it was a little bit about all the skills we had, string them a little bit differently, and that's how the people made their own changes when they felt ready to do that.
Yeah, I'll just add on a little bit. I think the affirmation part is really very powerful, because all the way as a healthcare providers, we always tell our patients, how come your wound to this, like this, and then why you didn't follow what I told you last session? So this is the improve way before I started this pitch. Now, because the first part of our program is ask patients to choose them or pick to sort out the cards and which one, because we have 12 tasks for patient to choose. Or this one I did well, I put card this out, and something I have used to more problems I put here. So we start with affirmation. We tell patient, you did well. See, now you control your diet. Now you look at your HbA1c from 11 now drop to 8. Then, although you know what is the normal range, 7. Yeah, I know 7, but give me some more time. It's really very touching, this kind of conversation. So I feel affirmation is really very, very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you mentioned in your slides and also using motivational interviewing as a form of interview method. So I just want to quickly move on to Emily, and then Paul, you're not spared, there is a specific question for you. Okay, but for Emily, I think this has kind of been answered, like how we're going to apply the learnings from Australia to Singapore. But I think what I wanted you to expand on is, what do you think? What are the barriers in Singapore that's limiting your participation in research?
Okay. Yeah, first thing is that, like what I said, is the mental block that I found researcher in Singapore is still having is people, as long as you have connecting environment, they are not capable. Next thing is that it's very hard for the researcher to take lived experience as a form of expertise. And thus, my recommendation to the whole thing is that try to have some kind of institutionalized the meaningful engagement of people with lived experience. Like in Australia, they have the organization which look into the involvement of the people with the lived experience in their research. And then journal is another one that can play a part. Singapore has so many healthcare journals. And the journal can do a part by saying that, okay, like what we did, I contribute to the Australian Occupational Therapy Journal, which is very widely established. And then my contribution to that one is that together with other lived experience is to have a plain text, summary, so that in that way, and also to include how type of involvement you have included in your study or research, all very clearly indicate. So in a way, it helps the researcher, whoever who is doing it, to understand that I'm doing this research not just purely for medical researcher or researcher community, but the end is also for lay people to understand, to read, to be accessible to them. So if you can just Google and then you can find any of the Australian Occupational Therapy Journal will have all those. And then the other thing is that once and then the what is it called, the grant review board. Now the grant review board should have people with lived experience to assess it and then say that, okay, this one good enough or not? Do this researcher include the participation of the community and the people with lived experience? Because that is what it is practiced in those countries that are involved. So whenever a researcher invite me, I will always try to find out very detailed of their research in their country, where they are, where the people involvement. So in different countries, it's called different way. In Australia, it's not called PPI. It's called Consumer Community Involvement, CCI. In Canada, you will know, it's people-oriented research. So every country will call it differently. German have another way to call it. But the whole thing is still come back to, it changed the whole dynamic. The people is at the center, together with the researcher around it, supporting how can we work together to have a better outcome.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emily. So I know 3/4 of the audience, whether online or here, are researchers. So, please be the first one to engage Emily in the local research. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Funny, so just a follow up. Follow up to this question, right, about research and what Emily said is a limitation of why Singapore we don't have enough of this. Maybe this is a question to researchers and our researchers on the panel as well. What do you think are the factors that is stopping researchers from involving patients? I mean, of course, all of us here on this panel are already doing it, but from your own, experience working with other researchers, what is stopping Singapore researchers? What will help to enable them to do more?
Of course. So,
No, go for it.
okay, so I think one major thing, right, is the dreaded three-letter word IRB. Okay, so I'll be the first to admit that I fight with IRB a lot. But I'll deal with it. There's a lot of back and forth, but it's a very constructive discussion. That's the nice politically correct term for it. But I remember that I had there's something that me and my supervisor at the time, Prophet Nico, we were working on, and we just kept trying to tell IRB, like, look, we want to involve patients in this capacity. But Arabic just kept telling us no, no, no. There was a real disconnect in understanding, right? But we kept at it. We continued to go and advocate for them. We continued to go and talk to Arabic to try and get them to listen. And up to the point where they actually had a newsletter that was directed specifically at us without our names. Right? So I think it is possible, right? Singaporeans would like to complain, right? So use that to good measure, continue fighting for it, continue advocating for it, and teach that, right? I think a lot of people who are uncertain about certain methods, once they know a little bit more, people are afraid of the unknown. But once they learn a little bit more, I think it's much easier to get by it. So for those of you who are not sure how to navigate IRB, I mean, similar, come talk to us. Talk to the people who have done successful work. We have quite a number of researchers here as well. So Dr. Hilary Ma does arts and aging as well. And yeah, so she can talk to you a little bit more about that as well. So there are many of us here, right? So if you want to start, don't worry, we'll be there to help hold your hand also.
Okay, hold on, Paul, because this question, I know it's been there. So since you're on this topic, how can we navigate the power dynamics between researchers and patients and address participant bias?
Right, so power is this major issue, and especially in work that is in. Coming from a helping profession and doing work like qualitative research, power is one of the things that we have to be very reflexive about. Right, so take an example from diabetic foot ulcer, right? I was talking to an individual with diabetic foot ulcer, and then I was looking at the data, and this was an interaction between a podiatrist and someone with DFU. And the patient had said, oh yeah, I put ginger garlic paste on my, this is very common, Julia is like, yeah, this happens, right? So I put ginger garlic paste in an attempt to heal this. And instead of the podiatrist going like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? They were like, oh, tell me a little bit more about this process. What exactly happened? And then she was like slowly leading up to the question she wanted to ask, did it get better? And then the patient was like, thought about it for a while, actually no leh. Then you know that, okay, you made an inroad here already. So it's that simple kind of people skills, that competency, right? And the breaking down of power structure. At that point, the podiatrist didn't think that I am the expert here. I spent years in doing this kind of like health related education, right? I've studied for it. All that went out the window. And just tell me about this experience. Was it why do you do this? This is your lived experience. This is your way of thinking. This is your knowledge system, which has value also. All right. So knowing that this person is more attuned to folk kind of healing, then your conversation shifts, your interaction with this person shifts. What you understand about them shifts, right? So I think it's really being coming from a place of humility, right? Really understanding that this other individual, their knowledge system has as much value as yours does as well. And let's try and find middle ground to sort of meet here. I think Nadia.
Yes, Nadia.
And sometimes it's how you prep the table for it. So at the introduction, there's an example, right? Look at me. I'm a white person. Of that age, I've been in Singapore since 2008. I have no clue what it means to actually be brought up in Singapore. And I go up and say, I have never kind of been on dialysis. I'm an animal, just let me understand. But that's the reality of that humility. I had conversations with people while they were dialyzing, and they were very happy, those uncles, to talk to me. I speak no Mandarin. It's how you present yourself. Would you present yourself with your genuine curiosity to really hear it out? What is it like to be on dialysis in Singapore on that center? How could I know the way I look, my job, my background, my experience? They are different. And that's why you need to hear it out. So think a little bit, what can I do when I open up that conversation and the silence to allow people to think what they want to say and wait up before you kind of jump in. That's what I find out, and once I'm training myself, because people say, oh, I've heard it often that people in Singapore are not very forthcoming. I'm not really buying into this. But I think we're jumping in too quickly. People are very forthcoming to share things, and sometimes you need to let them give a bit of time to maybe what they want to say is not what you want to hear. An example from Julia's work, we had one of the person that wanted to talk about sepsis. of the money. But it's important to hear. I know I cannot fix it because we cannot get, subsidies for the dressing, right? But you want to hear it out, acknowledge it. They say, well, I wish I could, and then go back to the topic. That doesn't make sense. So I think people always have something to say. Give them the opportunity. You have an agenda. You can go out later on. And again, I think it's that dynamic. I don't think that people, because they come from Asian ancestry, they're not willing to share. We haven't given that opportunity and the space. I truly believe that everybody has something to say.
Yeah, and I think Nadia also answered the next question about, I think someone in the audience was asking me about that. We always talk about training people with lived experience to be involved in research, but we often talk lesser about training researchers to create space, and which I think
Can I say something that's monopolizing? Yeah. we need to learn how to write science, myself included, in language that makes sense to people. What did we do there? The way summary is the beginning, but we're working on another project. Might be invited to work in PPI for genetics. So we looked at it, I'm like, what was this project about? I couldn't figure out. Can we put it in latents? It took the research team weeks to put the science into language that people will understand. And I'm not going to go normal people, like everybody, our neighbors will understand. So we need to learn to write and communicate science in a way that conveys the gist. So that's a skill that we're not trained very well. Do you think?
Okay, I think, sorry, there's something? Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, just to add on to just now what you say about the IRB, yes. Well, in Australia is that as a co-authors and things like that, I'm not subjected to IRB. It's only for research participant. So that means that I can, as a co-author, because of I'm not subjected to IRB, I can be involved, and there is no question on that in the co-author in research designing, things like that. The IRB only come in, or what they call the human science, human
research
ethics,
ethics,
human ethics, human ethics only come in if I'm as a research participant. So for me is that the main thing is what we can do in Singapore is to see people with lived experience, your patients, beyond research participant. Then you will see that we can contribute a lot. Like for example, the healing. A good example.
Thank you so much. I think we're running out of time, but I just want to do a quick one and end on with a question that has the words PPI and PRS. Can Paul give an example of when PPI or PAR did not work? And what did you do to avoid that happening in the future?
Okay, so I think every junior researcher, when you're starting up, your projects are always not going to be perfect, right? Like a thesis, it's a good thesis is a done thesis, right? So a good project is a done project. A good project actually starts, right? I think that's the important thing. So a point where it didn't work out. So I think PAR and PPI both have the capacity, or they both have the space to allow for these kinds of things to fall flat on its face, right? It is a very forgiving kind of methodology. Alright, it's not like statistics. Your statistics, you don't see the star, right? That's it. Your significant result, right? That's the end, right? But for PAR, PPI methods, that's why you refine, reflect, and so on and so forth. So certain things in my own research that hasn't really worked out well, I think with regards to, the sample that I work with, the people that I work with, those are people usually at the end of life, right? And time is short, and we have a lot of attrition. And we realized, we thought that attrition would only be mortality, would only be death. It would cause a dropout in the numbers. But we realized that it was also the space before that, the anticipatory grief, right? So sometimes caregivers just didn't want to talk to us anymore because it was too painful, right? And that was something that we did not account for early on when we were thinking about this. But it's something that we learned a little bit later. So that was perfectly okay because we used that and we sort of tweaked our study to involve different, whatever was comfortable and flexible for this individual one, right? So we understood now there is a new variable, there's end-of-story grief as well, right? So that was a learning opportunity for us, right? So yeah, so I think the method itself is very, very forgiving. You are expected to make mistakes. You are expected to not know what the hell is going on at some point in time. That's perfectly okay, but I think just be comfortable with each other, ceding all the control, like sharing the power, I think is important, and learning from each other, right? So I just want to add one more thing about culture, right? So Asian culture, one thing is that we tend to feel that, oh, you're an expert, you've studied, so you make the decision, right? You make the call, right? You know, what would I know? I don't know anything, you tell me lah, right? And oftentimes people might feel like, oh, if that's the case, then I'm just gonna do the whole top-down thing. But like what Nadia mentioned before, people do have a story to tell. It's kind of how can you initiate that plot twist with the patient that you're working with? How can you get the patient from thinking that, oh, you are the expert, you're the one who's supposed to have the opinion, to thinking, actually, hey, I'm the expert here. I'm the one with the lived experience. I'm the one with the opinion, right? Sometimes that takes a little bit of cultural know-how to sort of tweak, right? Yeah, so I think having good people skills, having good cultural humility, that is very, very important also. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think we cannot run through all the questions, but the parents will still be here, I guess. If you want to ask them questions, but I just want to round off. So because, again, just going back to our topic today is about, you know, for medical research, how can we move patients being from a research subject to being an active stakeholder, you know, who can shape research outcomes. So just an ending question in your role as a researcher, you know, a nurse clinician and patient advocate, what is just one message, okay? What is the most important message you would like to leave our audience about embracing patients as active stakeholders? Yeah. Anyone can start. I think Emily, the mic is like towards you. The most important message in your
Okay, see your patients beyond as a patient, and now see them as your collaborators, because you will know your reap benefit like humans like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think start from beginning until the end, the whole story, the storyline is a patient-centered care.
Thank you, Julia.
Make a team, make a good team, involve lots of different people on the team.
Yeah, so I think for me, it would be that, you know, not every patient would have medical education or like healthcare provider expertise. But us as researchers, we have the expertise, and eventually one day we will be patients also, right? So I think thinking about it like that, like how can I myself, or if you might currently be seeking health-related support for an issue or condition that you have, so how can I bring both of these worlds together? So I think it's combining, it's building that bridges, it's really bridging that gap. I think that's what we have to strive towards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I think anyone is not right?
Yes, so thank you so much to the panel. We have hit 2:00, and I know some of you might have other things to go to, so I'm just going to be very, very quick. Please share your feedback with us. We really do take it on board. This is our way of getting the public and patient input into how we do our events. So please fill that out for us. We very much appreciate it. Just a quick note. Hands up who came to our Patient Voices Symposium in November last year. Yeah, quite a few. So we are having another one. So, yes. So we'll be sharing the details with you soon, but if you do have your diary, 19th of November is the day. So we look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you there. We've got some good speakers that we're just confirming at the moment, some really exciting interactive things, so we hope to see you there. Thank you so much. I think the key things today, there was so many about, you know, different methods to use, but I think the main things were just being patient, listening, equality, and a sense of curiousness, and being able to embrace that to create much better research. So thank you so much. We will be spamming you with details about our upcoming events, which we're planning. But we're very grateful to have you all to come to here today. Thank you as well to all of our people on Zoom. And this event didn't happen if there's not a photo.